roll here. Am I opening artist? So we're going to open, here's how we're going to open. Going to look back behind me. We see Edward Jones. We see Continuity X. Just to let you guys know, we got a new 4-year deal with these guys, naming rights to this building. So you'll see Continuity X a lot. I know this. They solve problems in the IT world. And this time of year, I love solutions to problems. So that's how we'll open. And then what do we do next, artists? Go to questions?
Who are you drafting?
Who should we draft?
Well, I guess for starters, the wide receivers you looked at over the weekend. Just what's the purpose of that, and what do you gain out of that? Because you've obviously looked at those guys a lot before this weekend.
I think the scouting process starts well over a year ago. So that's just maybe the last piece of the puzzle in the process. But when you scout a player, it's usually a 2, maybe even 3-year process from when you start watching these guys and evaluating them. So that's just the final piece of the puzzle.
Les, you said the day you were introduced to us that if you had to have gone as pointed to your head, you could have drafted the next day. In the last couple months, how much through the evaluation process, how much has your opinion changed on some of these players, if at all?
Better prepared today than I was 2 months ago, for sure. So I think my answer to that was a gun to your head. Yes, the scouting process was about a year in, and what these last 3 months does is allows us to kind of look at how players fit in our scheme, and really, really fine-tuning some of the details on, if they fit that scheme and will they help Coach Fish and execute his schemes.
Along those lines, as you've come into a new organization and have a lot of things obviously that were there in place, just talk about that whole process with working with Jeff, working with the scouting department, all that as you reach this point.
I think easily when you come into new, there's a lot going on. You better focus on the big rocks. I think with Jeff, it was, hey, he got hired. He hired his coaching staff. When I got here, we were going to focus on maybe the trade, free agency, and draft. And those are really the big rocks we were going to focus on. And I think during the process, obviously Jeff and I are new, but you go through this together, you get really close. And I think we've definitely grown. We obviously had respect before the process started, but you get to know him well. Some late nights up here.
And what about the rest of the staff? The whole department?
The whole department, it's, some of them because this is a small league. Some you don't. I think just like in any business, they have a job to do. They've been doing it, and the final presentation of their evaluation on the player, that's the best resume they could have, and it's neat in that you don't know anybody. They're not really trying to tell either Jeff or I what we want to hear. They're just giving us their honest opinion on a player. So I think that's been a nice part of the process.
We gave the analogy when we met in the draft room Monday morning, 2 weeks before the combine, several days after Les joined us for the first time with the scouts. It was like it was the first day in school. We're in the classroom and everybody's looking around, and we almost had to have introductions. And to see how far it's come from that point, it's been very impressive. The scouts very, very talented. They're well organized. They're the dialogue that's taken place as we've gotten closer and closer to the draft has done nothing but improve. So we've come a long way, and the board's just about set and we're ready to go.
Jeff, I wanted to ask you, there seems to be a lot of...
Go ahead, Jimmy.
No, go, Ray.
With the confidence you've expressed in Sam and the investment that the organization has in him, how important is it for you to have premier weapons for him to work with?
Well, I think you can make a case that every position on this team is going to have an impact on Sam's performance as production. You talk about the defensive line getting the ball back and giving them more snaps and giving them more series, or the run game, the offensive line, keeping the defense off the field, protecting them. So weapons are, in fact, a priority of ours. But there's numerous needs on this football team. And so, we're not going to reach, we're not going to overreact, and we're going to make the right decisions to, put these pieces together.
Jeff, there seems to be maybe a lot of top 50 players with some off-the-field issues. Just wondered if you had a general philosophy of how you deal with those guys, what you look at, how you make a decision on whether to keep them on your board or take them off.
Well, yes, obviously you're talking about character. When we discuss a player, when the player's name is called out, the first thing that the scout identifies and discusses is his character grade. His football character grade, and then his personal character grade, and that is discussed in detail before we move on to the player. And of course, as a scout makes a first presentation, you get a sense for character, were there issues in the background, what those issues were. You continue with it. If they're obvious issues, that he's no longer on our board. If they're issues, questionable issues, we're going to do the research and the due diligence with the staff and do what we have to do to make sure. But character is a very important factor to consider, and we place a heavy value on it.
Just a couple quick follow-ups. Have you taken anybody off the board this year? And two, what's football character? Could you define what?
Yeah, it's what he does when he comes in the building, in the university. Is he good in the weight room? Is he a good practice player? Is he consistent? Does he finish? Is he enthusiastic? Is he a leader? Is he a captain? Those kind of things. All those inclusive things as far as the football personality. And yes, we have taken some players off the board, not only for character, but for lack of ability and also for injury.
Hypothetically speaking, if you had the top-graded cornerback on the board, still when you got to choose the top-graded wide receiver and top-graded left tackle, how do you sort out weighing the different positions in need if they're all the top-graded at their respective spots? Hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically, obviously, if you have a starting left tackle that you're happy with, you probably wouldn't take another starting left tackle unless you thought one of the two could play right. But I don't think you ever draft based on need. I think you better, before the process starts, sort out, if you have that dilemma, figure out if you just mentioned 3 players at 3 different positions. Talk about those 3 different players at those 3 different positions and who's 1, 2, and 3 and why. And you have that problem solved before you get on the clock.
Slightly off the track, can you guys address Steven Jackson's level of satisfaction? The rumors that he doesn't like his contract.
I think you stated accurately. Rumors. Steven's here as an off-season program. He's upstairs every other day. He's doing great, having fun, learning the offense, and no discussion, conversation, or anything along that sort, to my knowledge.
How about the rumors that he may be traded or that you guys are shopping?
Same thing. I mean, we talk about the potential ways of improving the roster, but his name has not been floated out there, and I don't know where it's coming from. There were some rumors, back when we did the trade with the Redskins, that Sam's name was floated out there. So people are just trying to create some excitement.
I'm kind of curious about how you guys go about the evaluation process of guys. For example, if you're looking for your cornerbacks and you like them tall, but a Darryl Green is sitting there, do you ignore what you normally like and go with a guy like that, or do you stick with your likes?
Do me answer. I'll go. I think on that situation, if there's a Darryl Green sitting there, I simplify it by going, it's just like you in the backyard. I mean, if Darryl Green's sitting there and he's shorter than you like, but he's special, that's very noticeable. It usually sticks out and it's jumping out at you, and you'll probably make an exception for that player. You better make sure he's special. You better make sure he's Darryl Green and not, somebody else. But a Darryl Green overcomes maybe a height deficiency because he's special in other areas, and you got to be able to recognize that.
Last, to expound on that question a little more, when evaluating prospects,
how do you weigh collegiate production and measurables, physical measurables?
I weigh it by this. These guys have either, I'll usually say God-given, mom and dad-given talent. You would like a player to produce consistently. That means they're basically taking their talent and doing something on the football field that's meaningful, that's helping their team win. So I think that's usually the case is when guys are pretty much the standard measurably, they're going to come to the NFL, and this game's going to be faster, it's going to be more intense, it's going to be more urgent. There's going to be a little bit of a filling out process, but usually the case is if they produced in college and they're not deficient in measurables, they're going to come up here and produce. When you go by just a guy who hasn't produced in college, but he has the measurables, you need to be able to answer why and project if he can. But I don't know if you can ever say yes or no without seeing it first.
Do you guys have enough for either of you? Do you have enough draft picks to fill your needs?
We're with the 8 picks, we feel like we have a pretty good chance of filling some holes. We've discussed that, Jim, and it's going to take some time. At this point, we're happy with where we are because we feel like we definitely filled some needs through pro free agency. We got starters there, starters that we didn't have before that started. So we expect to pick up some starters in this draft, and guys that can come in and start right away, hopefully, and guys that may take some time, depending on the position and where we get them. But it's going to be a process. To answer your question specifically, probably not. There are needs on this roster. Doesn't mean to say we don't have good players and we're not going to win games with the guys we got, because a lot of guys right now that we have on this roster have improved significantly just in the last 2 or 3 weeks with the hands-on things going on with the coaches.
Are you still open to the possibility of trading down for extra picks?
I think there's a possibility of us both trading up and down, yes. And we could also stay where we are.
Is there any other options?
What about coverage?
We could not pick either. Let the clock run out and see how many people jump in front of us.
Like you've got the top pick in the second round. You're going to have all day Friday to discuss it internally, entertain offers and that type of thing. How critical is that pick compared to even the first round pick?
I think I know where you're going. You left out all night Thursday night as well. So we'll probably have that solved on Thursday night. But critical, I'm not sure. They may be this. I think every pick is critical in each round because you want to get every pick right. But that pick is different in that we open up the next round, and there could be a player there that a lot of other teams won't, or multiple, and they want to move up, as I think what you're alluding to. So yes, that is a possibility. But if there's a player there we really want, we'll grab him.
Certainly there's a possibility for teams between the 3rd and the 16th pick in particular to move down. So in a way in which you're comfortable, both of you, can you just describe the level of interest that may have been expressed, at least from other teams in your 6th pick, or how many teams might have been asking about that pick?
Here's what I will tell you is I'll keep our business with other teams in-house. But I think, like in all drafts in the NFL, everybody weighs the quarterback position maybe more heavily than others, and probably rightly so. So obviously there are probably 2 quarterbacks taken with the first 2 picks, and there's a debate on whether there's a third one who should be taken next. And I think because of that situation, yes, there has been slight interest, but I'm going to keep that in-house on who and when and where and why.
You just told her everything.
Without giving the logos.
You mentioned getting every pick right. Talk about as you get into that Saturday, the later round, and so many rosters are built on a lot of those guys, how it gets tougher, but identifying the players that really have a chance.
What's interesting is we have all night Friday, too. I mean, we open both second and third day. So there's a chance Thursday and Friday night when it's over that we know who we're taking. there's also a chance that, you know, there, as Les said, there'll be some interest in that pick, and we can pick up some more picks. But there's a value throughout this draft. There's we would refer to extraordinary value in the college free agent market as well when this draft is over. So, you know, we can, you know, really, we can go any place, you know, in the second part of this draft in the last 2 rounds.
If you don't take a receiver in the first round, what's the depth of the class? I mean, are there guys that you really like, rounds 2, rounds 3, even rounds 4, that might be there?
Maybe ask Jerry Rice that question. What round was he picked in?
4.
You know, so that's what I'll say is out. You know, we better know the depth of the draft. I'm not going to get into that. That'd be a little too much business. But we better know the depth of the draft and know where we need to get players.
Is this a good class? Is there
Last question.
enough players? I mean, compared to last year, year before, is this, how's it?
I'll let him compare it to last year.
You know what? That's always the fun. I would ask you. You tell me. I'm more into, hey, this is the 2012 draft, and it's different from 11, and it's different from 10, and in each class, some positions are stronger than others, but I think really you have to be prepared for this draft, and I've never cried like, well, I wish it was 210, but because we're in 212, and you better get 212 right, so.
Jeff, when the draft ends, I know you'll have your scouts and maybe some assistant coaches on the phones calling free agents and that. Over your years at Tennessee, how important was that process? And can you think of a couple of players that you got as free agents that made big impacts?
Yeah, we had a number of players. Drew Bennett. You know, we let one slip away several years ago in LeGarrette Blount. But he was very productive it was a great signing for us. But it's a very, very important process. And yes, the coaches, the scouts are involved. Les and Kevin and I will be involved. And, you know, there's recruiting that goes on, and it's very, very competitive, and it happens very fast. You know, you take into consideration 31 other teams are doing the same thing. So you have to have a lot of phones open, a lot of stuff going on, and you have to have a plan. And so, you know, we've already discussed it, and we'll be prepared, and we get into much more detail, probably the middle part of the sixth round on.
You and following up on that, Dennis, we need to take that important because I know I've always done a study at the end of the season of where starters are, where you get starters from, and you can get the same percentage of starters from college free agency than you can the second and third rounds. Now, realize the second round you only have, quote unquote, 32 picks. College free agency, you usually have about 600 players. So it's a bigger pool. So you start, but the same amount of starters in the NFL usually at the end of the season, come from, and I think it's around 16, 17% come from the second round, and probably 16, 17% come from college free agency, depending on the year. So it'll fluctuate yearly, but they're pretty close. So that's a very important process, and we're going to take it seriously.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.